Welcome to Batten Builds Bridges.
We're your hosts,
Meghan Clancy,
Catalina Perez,
and Jasmine Rangel. This is a Batten podcast where we will delve into various issues that current Batten students face and how they relate to our identities and policy areas of interest as future policymakers.
We hope that we can engage the Batten community to have a more honest, in-depth conversation surrounding these important issues.
This is a mini-series on the topic of first-generation students at Batten, featuring pre-Batten students, Batten BAs, and Batten MPPs.
We hope you enjoy learning more about our first-generation community here at Batten.
For our first episode in this series, we interviewed Avery Romano, a first-year MPP student in Batten.
Hi, I'm Avery. I'm a first-year post-grad student in the Batten School, getting my master's in public policy.
Awesome. So, Avery, thank you for coming today. I think the first question that we'd like to start off with is, what has your experience in the Batten community been like so far as a first-gen student?
Okay. As a first-gen student, I've been really appreciative of the opportunity to come to Batten. It's a really prestigious program, lots of great opportunities.
Or once arriving to Batten?
The application process, to me, was actually one of the least intimidating applications I filled out for grad school. I really liked the essay structure. I think it gave us a chance to showcase more personal experiences rather than like statements of purposes can be kind of limiting, especially when you've had limited experiences. So I really like the way Batten had the 4 different questions, the different essays.
In your time at Batten, I guess I would be interested in knowing how Batten has supported you throughout this process as we're ending being in our first semester as graduate students.
Okay, so personally, I've kind of had some disappointments in the support system of Batten. I think overall they put out a very supportive vibe, which is helpful. At Chibo, everyone seems super helpful. However, I've reached out for help getting a tutor, and I'm just now getting set up with a tutor the second to last week of classes, and that's really kind of been detrimental to my experience. Hopefully going forward I could have more positive things to say about that.
What do you think is something that Batten could have done to help bridge that gap? Would you say that looks something like maybe at Chibo identifying first-gen students and their backgrounds and where they may or may not need support? Or I know we have the Batten Buddies program, but maybe if it was more specifically tailored to first-gen needs and experiences, do you think something like that could have helped?
I do like the idea of having a Batten Buddy type program for first-gens in general, even if that's not necessarily Batten cohort oriented, whether that might involve a partnership with a different master's program, but a similar program, maybe Curry School or something like that. I think just the types of experiences that post-grad first-gen students have are not really reflected.
About your time in Batten so far, can you name any specific experiences in which you were made most aware that you were first generation / just different from not your traditional generation, continuing, you know what I mean? Continuing, what was it?
Continuing generation
peers.
Specific situation. I'm trying to think of a specific situation because for me it's just been more of a general, continuous, crazy. I moved here all by myself, just moved here, showed up in Charlottesville one day, and I was I live here now. Yeah. And then I had to go to Chibo, and Chibo was great in terms of meeting new people. Yeah. I think it could have done a better job towards the program specifically. I really liked how I met certain subsets of people that I connected with, but I feel it could have done a better job laying out the faculty, the different centers that we have. I know we were introduced to the Leadership and Gaming Center, but they didn't really talk too much about the social entrepreneurship one that I was kind of excited about. And then you're just all of a sudden immersed in your classes and you don't really have time to engage with that. So I think that would have been more beneficial, not only for me as a first-gen student, but just post-grad students in general. I mean, maybe accelerated students are more familiar with the lay of the land, but, you know, coming from somewhere completely different is...
Yeah.
So would you say that in terms of, like, prescribing, I guess, possible solutions, if you were to talk to a Batten administrator or something, would you say you would like more focus on Chibo or just your time is in the semester itself? Because it does seem that Chibo was really foundational, make it or break it for a lot of people, and not just of the first generation cohort, but in general, like your first impression of the university, and it kind of does shape your experience later on. So what do you think?
So I would say that I would like to see more focus and emphasis on like my actual academic experience, or also to kind of have like a segue from Chibo that kind of connects Chibo to that academic experience in like an ongoing kind of way. Because I feel like it was kind of like, okay, 2 weeks you're immersed in this, and then it kind of like abruptly like cuts off, and you're like, all right, fend for yourself. But that hasn't really been, for me at least, it's been kind of like a disillusionment. I'm hoping that that's not really the case, because I think Batten's a really great place. I think especially like with student focused like initiatives, like student driven initiatives and stuff like this, I think that really helps with the sense of community.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And to your experience that you had at Chibo, I kind of had the flip side where I felt extremely isolated. I think part of it is due to my own personality of being more introverted. But also I think as a first-gen student, feeling extra intimidated of being in a professional program with people that are post-grad that have come either from prestigious universities or prestigious professional experiences where I feel like I couldn't really measure up, and I felt like I had a hard time connecting with people. When you brought up like some of the prescriptions that you would make and your experience in Chibo, I was thinking like for me, I feel like it would have been very beneficial to, whether we self-identified or not, just know that there were other first-gen students in our cohort. I think would have made, even if we didn't connect right away, it would have made me feel a little less alone, like I wasn't the only one having this experience. For instance, I don't think we found out that we were both first-gen till like 5 or 6 weeks into the semester.
Yeah, we actually established that at Jasmine's Courageous Conversation and Policy.
Right.
And that was a great avenue for meeting diverse people, like just identifying people's different backgrounds. I'd actually kind of like to see something like that in Chibo. I think that would be cool.
I would second that. Plug for CCP, and also expanding it and the resources for it. I think it's a really unique space for us to not only talk about our identities and the ways in which those create barriers, but also celebrate the ways in which it can really empower us, like we were just talking about at our Flip Dinner event, that our first generation identity is something to celebrate, and is something that not only makes our experiences different than our peers, but also can set us apart from our peers if we can learn from it.
Definitely.
Sure. Okay, so the Flip Dinner that we just came from, actually, we just had some nice conversation. FLIP stands for First Gen and Low Income Partnership. It has been started by some undergraduate students here at UVA, but tonight was a great opportunity to not only have conversations about our first gen / low income identities, but the ways in which our experiences both differ and overlap. What would you say, both Catalina and Avery, what were your biggest takeaways from tonight's dinner?
I have said this multiple times throughout the night, but I thought it was really cool how, usually when you see an organization like Flip that is very specific in terms of its name, like being first generation, low income, you might think it's for a specific type of people, but they made it very specific that they are open to having allies, and not only allies, but that first generation low income can encompass a wide range of people that might not even traditionally realize that they are under those categories. And so I think it's a good step in the right direction of encompassing more people and having people realize that this is just normal. It's not like I think someone we were talking to mentioned that it's not something that you need to like hide as part of your identity, and I think that a lot of times people suppress that because they may not realize that that is actually in fact what they're dealing with. But having an organization that brings people together, and you can realize that yes, this may be a part of your identity, but it's so many other people's identities, and you will thrive together, and I think that's really impactful.
Yeah, just going off of what Catalina just said, she mentioned the ally aspect that they kind of emphasized at the meeting. And I really like that because, like, even though I do identify as being both first gen and low income, that can be kind of limiting, like, in terms of who you reach out to for support. But knowing that you have other people who don't necessarily fit those categories but are aware and open to talking with you about struggles that you might be having, or open to this type of thing, like developing solutions going forward, I think that's really helpful.
Something that came to mind while you guys were talking, and I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this. So during Chivo, we had just like general little like seminar type thingies of like how to have self-care and how to deal with race and stuff. And I feel like it would be valuable to have one just to, like you said, Meghan, show people in the cohort that there aren't just people like them, that there are in fact first generation, things like that, and then expose people to all different ranges of backgrounds and talk about what that means so that people are more aware. I think it's less of like, I think it would make it easier for people to be able to navigate conversations and not have to tiptoe around each other, but also and know how to be respectful. I think, you know, even some people in our cohort aren't really sure what first generation even means, being this old and this, you know, deep into the game. I think if we kind of had everyone on one level playing field from the beginning, just laying it all out there, we don't obviously have to like identify people or anything, but I think that might be a good idea. I don't know how you guys, feel free to push back if you don't think.
No, I definitely like that idea, and I think it's really important to kind of put the subject out there, especially because, like you said, there are people who are straight up unaware of it, and I think like having that conversation, or at least opening the door to having the conversation, sets the tone for like in the future being solution oriented. So I think I would hope, at least for people who are getting their master's of public policy and maybe thinking of going into public service, that they would kind of have that mindset of like being aware of different groups who face different challenges, or, you know, looking out for those people even if they don't identify as being a part of that group, but identifying as an ally.
Yeah, I think that's a really important area where Batten definitely has room for improvement. One thing that really drew me to staying here at UVA and continuing to get my master's specifically through the accelerated path was last fall they did, during First Gen Week, they had a student listening panel, and there was First Gen faculty and a couple alumni and a few potential students. We were probably a group of definitely under 20, but just the care that they were taking with first gen issues and the commitment that they were showing is kind of what convinced me that, okay, like Batten Accelerated MPP is probably the right path for me because I can get the support that I need as a first gen student. However, I do think to our point of spreading awareness, that opportunity was missed this year during First Gen Week. And while I understand that student initiatives are obviously a huge thing at UVA with student self-governance, I do think that an aspect of that does need to come from faculty and administrators to really show us as a first-gen and low-income community that it's not just about getting us through the door and getting us through the admission process, but they recognize the ways in which our experiences differ from our continuing generation peers while we're here in Batten.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd like to see it be made more of a priority and less of like an afterthought almost. That never feels good.
I guess a question I had for you, Avery, was when you were considering this program, I guess, did the first generation and how they treated them at Batten and all of that, did you take that into account at all when you were applying, or not, I guess?
I would say not really. Mm-hmm. When I was applying to grad school, it was kind of like I had several different people in my life supporting me through the process. So just to hear, like, knowing I had other people who believed in me, it kind of dispelled that pressure I think first gens have a lot, is like maybe not believing in yourself to the fullest of your potential. So to me, it was really helpful to have those people in my corner. So I definitely tried not to think so much about it because I feel like I could talk myself out of things, like talk myself out of opportunities that I would be qualified for. Mm-hmm. I think that's just something that people from a first-gen background might do. So no, I really didn't think about it, but I was excited about Batten's focus on leadership because of my background. I worked, during undergrad, I worked with a leadership and service center at my school, and one of their main focuses was diversity. And so to me, diversity is about like accepting people from different backgrounds, which includes first gen.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point, is that the first gen community is so diverse. I think Professor Martin specifically, when we were having a conversation with him, he said that the first gen class that he's running through Batten this semester is the most diverse class at UVA that he's taught. And I think that is a great way for Batten to meet their goals of expanding diversity at Batten. I think they are well aware that it's not as diverse as it should be, and there's a lot of voices that are missing from our program. And I think showing support for the first gen community is kind of hitting two birds with one stone, because the first gen community is so diverse, and really recognizing the ways in which our identities, both as first gen and or low income, are different.
Mm-hmm. And to go off of like Batten's emphasis on leadership, I feel like could really target lots of aspects of the first gen community. Like at the dinner we just had, we were talking about resilience and determination that is unique to first gen students, and I think that fits in really nicely with leadership.
Yeah, I think to that point, Catalina had shared kind of how her application process for her undergraduate program, she really had to take hold of that, and I think that is a pretty unique part of the first gen experience. If you'd like to talk about that a little bit, what that looks like for a first gen.
Yeah, I had mentioned that while I am not traditionally first gen in the sense that both of my parents are educated, because we are immigrants, and I myself am a naturalized citizen, I had a lot of unique experiences that do reflect, I think, a lot of the same experiences that first generation students encounter, in the sense that for the majority of my middle school, high school, and applying to college, I very much had to do things on my own, and I kind of made the point that all the money in the world can't make your parents know English and can't make them know how the American university system works, because it's so different in other countries that it's kind of really just up to you. And it was tough because I studied extra hard in high school, and I had my English is my second language, so a lot of the English comprehension was very difficult for me when I was doing my SATs. So I took my SATs about 17 times, starting when the first time I took it, I was in the 8th grade up until my senior year of high school. And I, finally got my cumulative score, wasn't even my raw score. And I shared with my boyfriend my score, and he had the same exact one, by just trying it one time without studying. So I think it was really indicative of my experience that I, had to put in the extra effort. And I feel like a lot of first gens also can sympathize with having to work a little bit extra and go the extra mile, relative to maybe your peers that have the support and can know tips and tricks from their parents and, maybe other people they know in their lives that have gone to college. So, that experience, I think for me, is one of the things when I was thinking about that made me realize, like, oh, I actually have had this experience that I may not have obviously been in college for 4 years and didn't even consider myself to be, I guess, having the same issues as first generation students. But it's true, it's really difficult in different ways, which is why I think it's really important for this new initiative to help as many students as possible, not simply just the ones that are very identified as first generation in the traditional sense. I think it's important to spread out to translations and language training and things like that, in order to encompass students that may have the resources, may have the parental support and all of that, but maybe lacking in language support or coming from abroad and things like that, because things are so different. And nowadays we're such a diverse community that it's so important.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So as we wrap up, I think we've talked a lot about the different barriers that we face as first-gen students in Batten, not having the same social capital or academic background as our peers, and that our pathway here has definitely been non-traditional, however that looks like for each of us. But I'd like to end on a positive note. What do you envision for our first-gen Batten community, either immediately in the future or long-term goals?
Okay, so first off, I think Batten in general is a really strong community. So I think if we end up successfully developing a community of first-gen students and allies, I think that would be really strong overall. And especially like our focus on leadership would tie in with that really well. And also being solution-oriented always helps. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing today.
thanks for having me.
Avery's idea of co-opting a Batten Buddy type program across other graduate and professional schools for first gens is an interesting idea.
I really liked how Avery shed light on the important theme that we all want to underscore here, and that's that being first gen, along with many other things, is not a one-size-fits-all identity. She felt confident throughout the application process and had a ton of support from her family, which is totally, totally awesome. I think she had a really positive outlook on her future here at Batten, and she looks forward to some changes that can help her have even more successes as a first gen.
If you have any topics or personal stories that you would like to share with the Batten community, we welcome your voice. Just contact Catalina, Meghan, or Jasmine.
Thanks for listening.